welcome to another American TESOL Presents Free Friday webinars. We are here every Friday due to American TESOL, and you can find the links, you can find all the free YouTube recordings of the webinars, and you can even get the bookmarks by going to americantesol.com/blogger. On our blog, we post everything, so you'll be able to keep up. We have over 100 recordings on different topics for teaching language learners around the world, any age group. And so now we are going to also be, our upcoming webinars will be talking about young learners, teaching English to young learners, also teaching business English, and trying some other topics like that as well. Today we're going to talk about resources for Hispanic Heritage Month. This month, actually starting September the 15th and ending on October, is Hispanic Heritage Month. And many people around the world will celebrate, especially in Latin countries or countries with those roots. And there are lessons from very young learners all the way to adults. So this isn't only for children, but it's also for teenagers, adolescents, and there's going to be different activities you can do throughout the year, even if you're not celebrating. One of the reasons why we celebrate different countries and cultures, and I know there's actually a very famous holiday, I think a religious holiday as well here, and coming up is going to be more holidays that people celebrate around the world. And one of the reasons why we take that opportunity to introduce our students to different cultures is because when we teach English or we teach language, different people around the world are able to be to learn from each other. They can learn also and connect with each other, and they can speak English with each other from all around the world. And in fact, David Crystal ran an exhibit in the British Library, and in this exhibit it stated that there were millions who spoke English around the world, and that was their second or third language. So there are actually more people who learn English and speak English that are not native speakers than native speakers. So if being a first language, there are less people who English is their native than there are those who are learning it for a second or third language, which I thought was pretty amazing. So the chances of you hearing English from other people around the world is actually higher. So Hispanic Heritage Month is September 15th to October 15th. And recently in Mexico, they celebrate a holiday actually today. But it doesn't only involve Latin American countries, because Hispanic heritage has roots in even in Africa and things like that when it comes to different parts of the culture. So you can find, for example, especially in the music and the dances, it has different influences. And also in Europe, if you think about Spain, there's a lot of culture there as well. And so there are different countries involved around the world that would be celebrating and have the roots of Hispanic heritage. You can teach history, you can teach about clothing, introduce your students to different authors, poets, like Pablo Neruda, traditions, important people, and it's different countries all around the world that you can really celebrate. Music, instruments, dances, festivals, countries, food, the language, and so much more. And when you introduce your students to all of these, or just segments of these, there's a lot of fun that you can have. And yes, I love what Christina is doing. Christina just mentioned one of the great people, the artist, which is Frida Kahlo. And I didn't put that there, but you can introduce to different Spanish art as well, paintings, photographs. So there's so much that you can teach your students. The best site to really find out what's going on now, to be able to go to free events, I think they might even have some online events, is HispanicHeritageMonth.org. You can also find where it's celebrated. On this site, it's a basic site, so you'll find things like fun facts, you'll find history, and then also different types of events. Now, most of the events are going to be in countries in America. I mean, states in America or places in America. And the reason why is because this is a designated American celebration here. So in other countries, it might be at different times that they celebrate their different cultures. So I'm going to go into the lessons and also the activities, because you can also use this to celebrate many different types of cultures. One of the activities, and we'll be having a webinar come up soon, is to have your students look at a timeline of that culture. So depending on what history you want to teach them, here they can see an interactive history or timeline with multimedia, with pictures. Sometimes they have links to videos, and these are pictures from the past as well. You can find one on Hispanic American history if you go to Timeline, and Timeline will even show you where there's different Native Americans, Spanish, things like that. It shouldn't be restricted. No, it shouldn't be, but let me know if this site is region restricted, so that way I know. But once your students, of course, see a timeline and you introduce them to multimedia timeline that they're able to click on and see pop up and learn the information in a very visual way. The great thing about timelines is that language learners, it's easy for them to be able to learn the information versus just their textbook, because they have the picture and they have only a little chunk of text that they will see as part of the description. So it's a great way to learn different history. You can try and look for timelines of different people. So for example, if you were to put Latin art, Latin dances, and you did a search for that on Timeline or one of the other sites, then you'd be able to find a timeline on that topic. Yes, maybe even Frida Kahlo, or it'd probably be under. So you can do a search on that, and then it would come out, and then your students can be introduced to that. So the next step after your students see a timeline with that culture is, of course, to get them to create their own timelines. And these are some free sites that your students can use to create timelines. Multimedia ones like the ones you just saw. You can go to americantesol.com/blogger/timeline tools, or just americantesol.com/blogger. Do a search for timelines and you'll find the post as well. And then you'll be able to click on any of these and test them out. So these are the 6 that I think are the best. I actually have, I think, 10 on the post, but I think these are the best for students. Time Toast, Time Glider, Time Rhyme. You saw an example what that looked like. Tiki Talkie, Dippity, and History. History without the I and without the O. So those are all sites that allow your students to create multimedia timelines. The next resource I think is really great for Hispanic heritage or learning about the Latin culture or even history. You can find a lot of different history from around the world, is the Smithsonian. And the Smithsonian will actually introduce you to different exhibits that they have online. The Smithsonian has a really great site. They have a lot of resources where you can go and you can visit their exhibits virtually. So a lot of us may not be able to travel and be able to visit that museum, but online we're able to still get the experience of seeing the Smithsonian. So I think that's really amazing. If you look at their Hispanic Heritage teaching resources, what they've done is they've taken all the exhibits that they have that would have some kind of history, and they put it online, different lesson plans for you for different ages. So some of them you can see here. For example, they have one from of mass, different mass from around the world, and celebrating things like Carnival and um, for Latin cultures. And I know there's some of you that are from Brazil. That's definitely something that happens in Brazil as well. A version, a Carnival there. And then even in Italy, in Venice, they have a festival that's very similar with mass and things like that too. They also have different stories from different Latino families. A lot of people around the world really are interested in cowboys. So they do have an exhibit of from vaquero to cowboy. And vaquero was actually it's the name of the of a cowboy that was a Latin cowboy, a Latino cowboy. So it's a Spanish rooted or those of Latino culture, they called their cowboys vaqueros, and it gives you the history of that and how that influenced the cowboys in America. And I know when I taught in Germany that my German students, that they loved learning about cowboys, the adults, as well as in fact, I think the adults were more excited to learn about cowboys and teens than the children. But they love learning about anything they could see about cowboys, especially cowboy hats that I could bring from Texas to Germany. They would just love. So I know that might be very interesting for your students. But the best thing that I love from the Smithsonian is that they have a Smithsonian Latino Virtual Museum. So what that means is that you're able to visit virtually. And this site is set up really, really well. This is from the Smithsonian. You click around, you basically see this virtual world. You click around and you can see 2D and 3D exhibits. So it's very good because it doesn't have you sign up for anything. It doesn't have it to where you have to open another browser, or it's just there on the site. You just click around and then you'll see the resource pop up, and then you can go visit. So they have different types of ways you can explore for very young learners, children, all the way to adults. So this one would be for children, and over here, their Eco Explorers series. And so your young learners could go and they could explore this, and they can see the collections. They have lesson plans and things like that too. Now, if we click over here, however, this could be for adults. And what I like about this one is they also integrate social media. So even though you can explore around this virtual world, they send you the other resources and sites they have. So this might be very appealing for your teenagers, your college students, or your adult language learners, because they actually get to see different parts of the exhibit here on Instagram. So this link will lead you to Instagram, where you can explore their exhibits that they have. And this one is actually on Dia de los Muertos. So that could be very interesting for your students, especially since a lot of students love Instagram. Another resource they have in their virtual museum, the Latino Virtual Museum, are different video casts. A video cast is basically a video that's short that you can subscribe to. They have different guests that come and speak. They have different authors, different artists that you can see. Currently, they have video interviews with Sandra Cisneros, and Sandra Cisneros is a very famous Latina author. Actually, she's from San Antonio, so we learn in San Antonio. That's where I was born and raised. She's actually very famous in San Antonio, and we learn about her throughout our education in San Antonio. So that's very interesting. But you can see different videos. They also have music videos. They introduce you to different bands, but they do it in an educational way. So that's something that you can see there as well. They also have podcasts. So if you're looking for listening, if you're looking for a listening exercise for your teenagers, even adolescents, depending on their level of English, also your adult students or your college students, then the podcasts work really well. Something you can subscribe to. And they have the different exhibits, and they have experts and people that make the art speak, and they talk about what is in that exhibit. So those are very good for listening exercises. And then, of course, they have different archives. So every museum, that's what's so great about going digital. I think it's very smart of the Smithsonian. So exhibits come and they go. And a way to preserve that is to make a digital archive, and even they have archives, physical archives as well. But the great thing about the Smithsonian is they share those past archives with us through this virtual museum, so we can have access. So you can go through a lot of their different exhibits and see something that may be very interesting for your students. And what's really great about looking at museum resources and using that with language learners is they usually have images, they have video, they have listening, all of that, and they have a little bit of text and information. So those make for excellent readings, and they're not too much, and they don't have too many words for your learners. They're a small amount of text, so they make, yes, it's a very great site, and it's all free. They also have a bilingual section. So sometimes, especially in Texas, we have where our language learners will teach them in 2 languages. And usually, yes, it's usually November and October, but this site is on all the time. I mean, it's September 15th to October 15th, but the site is on the whole entire time. You can use these resources whenever you want to have a reading or you want to supplement the textbook or have a listening, then they're there. So if you do teach in 2 languages, they do have materials and lesson plans in English and Spanish. They may have other languages as well. So I would check just to see if they have Portuguese. They might have that because there are Latino roots in that as well. But they have it in different subjects. So if you teach CLIL, Content Language Integrated Learning, they have science lessons and they have humanity lessons in both as well. Another really great site with different types of lesson plans that have visuals, that have multimedia, and that get your students to travel to a virtual world, or not a virtual world, but online, and see pictures. So that's a way of also getting our students to learn about other cultures and also about other places around the world, is to have your students go on virtual trips and they can see pictures and they can learn about that particular region or geography. So that is nps.org. That's the National Park Services. And they have where you can have lesson plans. And the lesson plan means that it's they give you ideas. They tell you how to introduce the lesson, how to also assess the lesson. They give you ideas for activities during the lesson. So all of these are free resources and free lesson plans for you and you can choose what you want to use. So one of my favorites that they take you to is the San Antonio Missions. So where I was born and raised, my name is Shelly Sanchez, is my birth name. So that's Latino is part of my culture. But also in San Antonio, this is a huge event celebrating Hispanic heritage because we have a lot of this, and San Antonio, we do celebrate this. We have a lot of people from around the world, from South American countries, from also Mexico and other places that happen to come and they study here. So when they decide to, San Antonio is one of those areas, and it's a very beautiful area. And we have missions. So one of the places they'll take you if you're interested in visiting my hometown, they actually, one of their first lessons is in San Antonio, and it's of the San Antonio missions. We have 5 missions, and these are what children and students in my city go to visit. Every elementary, that's where we go, and those are our field trips. That's where we actually go visit. So it's very, very interesting, and you learn about Native Americans and some other cultures as well. You can also go and travel to other places around the world. They have lessons plans for that. One of the ones I really like too is this one, where it's a lesson plan where they have you travel to to Spanish treasures. You get to look up, your students get to search for Spanish treasures. In Spain, they've had some of the earliest cave paintings ever found from thousands, tens and thousands of years ago. So that could be interesting for your students, a great lesson plan where they get to travel and find some treasure. If you like a lot of images and lesson plans where you share historic images or even videos from the past, or of past archives, music, dancing, singers, you name it, and they have art, sculptures. They have a lot of this with the Library Congress. So the Library Congress has a Pinterest page, and they have pinned thousands and thousands of resources for you so that you can use for free with your students. So the Library of Congress makes all of this online, and these are photos from the past and just different recordings and videos. So it's a really great information. They're not necessarily lesson plans, but they're great resources to make a lesson plan out of. And another great multimedia lesson, so a lot of us like to use videos for teaching our language learners or for teaching in general. And if you want video lesson plans, then PBS has amazing archives of lesson plans, and they have a video. Each one has a video. You can scroll down, and I think there's at least probably about 20 and you can download a PDF, and it gives you the entire lesson, what you can do with it, how to assess, how to introduce the video, what your students can do with the video. They have transcripts, I believe, as well. So they really walk you through it, and then you can adapt that lesson the way you want to. But they don't only have Latino Americans, they have other cultures as well. So depending on if you want to teach another culture, just look up that culture, and they'll have probably video lessons on that. In talking about video lessons, I want to introduce you to a video lesson I came up with that you can use with your students. This would be for adolescents or young learners. And so this video lesson, one of the top songs this year is from a group called Bomba Estieros, and it's called Soy Yo. Soy Yo means I am me. That's the translation. But it doesn't matter that it's in Spanish, because one way that you can teach with videos, especially language learners, is strip the sound. Don't play the sound. So what you would like to do when you teach this lesson is you actually just want to play the video, and you want to show the video because it tells a story. It tells a story about a little girl that is Latina and how she grows up. And so your students can start guessing what that story is, and they can also relate it to them growing up. So if you show this to adults, then you can talk about how they grew up, whether it was the same, is it the same, what is different in their culture versus this little girl's culture. And you're doing this without the sound. So you first want to play without the sound. So we're going to do an example here. Here you see two pictures from the video. And so what do you think is happening in the video? So we have the main character, which is the little girl, and she's Latina. And what is she doing in the picture? What do we think the story is about? Yes, she is very expressive with her actions. She's playing a flute. And look at the expressions and how the girls are dressed differently in the video. So what is the reaction of these girls to this Latina girl? So yeah, she's giving a performance. So what do we think is going on here after we look at? Yes, they are very aggressive. Stacy says aggressive, exactly, and TBT. So, or indifferent. So what do we think might be going on between this girl and this little girl and these little girls? Yes, they're not very impressed. And we can talk about this in your students. They can bring up times. Yes, maybe they're suspicious. But even if we look at the clothes, we can kind of tell how this is, how in the video it actually it shows how this little girl stands out in different cultures and in different situations. So on this one, and how she just is herself in every situation, even if the other kids, exactly, Stacy, not accepting different cultures. And so it's a great video because it walks her even through. She dances in front of break dancers. She dances silly. Another scene in the video is where she tries to play basketball with a bunch of boys, and they look at her very funny, and how this girl just keeps being different even when some don't accept her. And so maybe this is something that your adolescents or teenagers could really identify with. And so I really like this video because I like showing TED Talks and some other videos to students, but you don't often see a video that actually has them in it that they can relate to. So that's what I would do. I would take the video and I would just play the scenes without the music. And then later on, we can introduce them to the music. We can ask them about Latino culture. Okay, you see the little girl. How is her hair different than the other little girls? These girls aren't Latinos. So what's the difference here? What is the difference in style? What, how she has her hair, how she's dressed. She has a bike, where she lives. And we can talk about cultures in general, and they can talk about their own culture. They can talk about how their hairstyle might be different, how their dress, how their clothing might be different, how the music, then you can play the music, which is fun, happy music, and it's kind of a dance music, and then compare the music. They can compare in English, their music and culture, the culture of their music versus the culture of this particular song, which is actually pretty representative of modern Latino music. So that's one video lesson, or one way that you can also introduce different lesson plans if you want to show music or video or something like that. If you play it without any words and then have the students look at the narrative and talk about that, and then come up with their own narrative. They can do things like come up with their own scripts. What are the girls saying versus the little girl? They can name the little girl. They can also create comics or something with different panels that shows a similar adolescence, like a time in their life when they were an adolescent and they felt like they were in a situation where they were with another culture and what happened, whether, you know, it was more accepting and things like that. There are tons of places you can find a lot more lesson plans. Color in Colorado has some for young learners that is very great activities for young children. You have puzzles, you have coloring books, you have recommended books that you can read to your students that are great for this time. They can send an e-card. There's many different activities. They have podcasts as well that you can use. They also have things that you can print out and games. Education World has different lesson plans. I think they're more for adolescents and teenagers, and with these ones, but they have you make crafts. So one of this that could be good, especially for language learners, is to make a phrase picture dictionary. So you don't necessarily have to make it in Spanish. They can take this lesson plan, and it says here, students create a picture dictionary of common English phrases translated into, and it could be a different language. So it doesn't have to be Spanish. It could be any type of language that you want. Picture dictionaries are great for young learners as well. It's a great way for them to learn English. Travel guide. Students in this particular lesson plan make a travel guide. So they learn about a specific country where Spanish is the official language, and then they make a travel guide so students can go, people will go and they can visit that country. And they learn about that country by looking it up online or going to any of the resources I showed you. Here they make cartograms. Cartograms are a particular type of map that you can use to teach geography, so it's great. And this is for grades, it's adolescents to teenagers. They have different puzzles they make, self-portraits in the style of Latino, of different places. They make a lot of artistic things, and so you can find those tons and tons of resources, but they give you great ideas. Also, Scholastic has a great guide for Hispanic heritage and celebrating. So you can download their free guide, and their guide is anywhere from very young learners all the way to about teenagers. So you can find guides for all of that. Teacher Vision also has some activities. What I like about the Teacher Vision ones, if you like crafts and your students, you want them to make crafts and you're into teaching music and art, Teacher Vision is the place to go. They have tons on drumming, how to make maracas, and they have from different countries around the world. You have Puerto Rico here. I think you might have some from Colombia and just different places. They teach you about the music. They teach you, here is a traditional circle game from Puerto Rico. So it's a fun game your learners can play. They also have dancing. They have where your students also can make different kinds of instruments as well. And also the NEA also has some fun lesson plans as well. They have where you travel to Mexico. You can also have a journal of time, a historical perspective. So you have different lesson plans there. And then finally, Read, Write, Think has a lot of resources. They have different sites where you can go visit, and then they walk you through different types of exhibits, collections. Some of the stuff we've already seen, they have those kind of lesson plans as well. And if you really want to get your students excited to connect with another class and speak in English, but also learn about the Latino culture, then find a class that is in a Spanish-speaking country, or a Latino country, wherever Hispanic heritage, and there's tons all around the world. Or just find a class from a different culture that you can Skype with and teach each other about your culture. So your culture, you can ask each other questions ahead of time. You can have your students prepare questions. Here, often you can ask guest speakers from around the world. You can ask artists, you can ask singers, you can ask musicians. In San Antonio, we have our different colleges have mariachis. Mariachis are famous musicians that are of the Latino culture, and they will Skype for you. I had a class where they'd even show you dances. Latino dances in Spain. They have flamenco, things like that. Your students can teach each other these different things on Skype. So your students can line up and they can each ask your guest expert a question. So here's me. I often serve as a guest speaker as well. And so that's what I've seen classes, and this is a class that was actually in Romania. They were third graders, and they lined up and they each asked me a question in English. So that's a great way to get your students to learn from each other. We've done songs before where we teach each other different songs and traditions and things like that. So I think that, yeah, exactly. There's so many. Peggy George says there are projects that are just beginning that you can join, and all of them are free and hosted by students. So if you connect with other classes, you connect with experts, your students will really get to experience a different culture. I know for my German students, they loved it. They just the experience really, really helped them a lot, and they just really enjoyed it, all ages. I did it with 4-year-olds all the way to adults, and they love Skype. So Microsoft has set up a Skype in the classroom, and their site, it's free, but you do sign up for all the free resources and stuff to get to it. You can start a teacher, you register as a teacher, it's free. And then they have where you can find lesson plans on Skype. Some of language teachers love to use Skype to teach English, so that's a great resource if you're thinking of teaching online. You can find some lesson plans. How to do mystery Skype. A mystery Skype is really great for celebrating Hispanic heritage, because what you do is you try to guess the country that the students are in. In this particular one, you don't tell the students. It's a mystery. And so your students have to come up with questions to be able to discover this. And so they have all these resources for mystery Skypes with students around the world. Yes, a lot of fun. They also have virtual field trips. So your students can travel to different places around the world and have a virtual travel experience. And then they have guest speakers as well. You can, it's great if you're able to even get people around the world that you can even get somebody from like the Smithsonian to Skype in and talk about the exhibit, or someone that was maybe a Native American, someone that's a flamenco dancer, someone that plays music, Spanish music. There's so many areas that you can, or guest speakers you can introduce to your students and introduce them to culture as well. And that's it. So I'm going to give you the link once again to all of the resources that I've shared. You can find those and more if you go to the American TESOL site. Also, if you go to my slide share, and I'll go ahead and get that, you can find all of the different presentations, including this one, there. So thank you so much. I'm going to end the recording, but we will definitely see you next week. And have a happy time celebrating Hispanic Heritage this month.